Thanks for joining today's FAST class. I'm Keaton, a Dynamics 365 developer at Syvantis. Today, we're going to discuss how to get started building our very first Power App. Before that, however, it's important we talk about what exactly PowerApps is and what it's used for. PowerApps is Microsoft's low-code solution that can create apps that handle different business processes for users. One of the primary uses, and probably the most useful choice for PowerApps implementation, is to create forms that can be distributed to your users so that they can modify fields, view data, or add entries directly into your backend SQL servers or into Microsoft's Dataverse in a controlled and easy to manage way. A significant benefit of using PowerApps is that it can serve as an interface for complex data that can't be dealt with using native Dynamics functionality. It can pull from many different data sources and synthesize them into one well-designed app. And it can also connect natively with Power Automate to bring in whatever you need for your users. All of this results in an app that is a front-end representation of virtually anything. If you have any questions throughout this class, drop them in the chat. Consultants are here to answer them for you. So let's get started by creating a new app so you can see what I'm talking about. First, navigate to your Power Apps tab in Microsoft 365 or simply go to make.powerapps.com. I've already done this. If you've done any Dynamics work in the last couple of years, you've probably seen parts of this since Power Apps and Dynamics backends have a native integration. Next, we're going to go to the Create tab on the left navigation. You can also create an app by going to the Apps tab on the left navigation, and in the top left corner, you can click New App. Back on the Create tab on the left, you'll notice that there are quite a few different options for setting up apps. On the bottom, there are a lot of templates, and there are a couple different choices at the top as well. Most of these have a setup for how to create an app using different backends. You can see that you can create different apps automatically using Dataverse, SharePoint, Excel, SQL, images, and from Figma UI. As you can tell already, there's quite a lot of different choices you can use to display your data out of the box, but since we're just going to create a simple app, we'll go ahead and start from blank. Please note that if you did create an app from the Apps tab on the left navigation, you will always be creating from blank. What we see next is the three different types of apps that we can make using PowerApps. For most of the apps that are more independent from Dataverse, we'll use the Canvas app. But I'll go over the differences between these anyway. A Canvas app is an app that you can build with any data source you choose and can exist completely independently of Dynamics. A Canvas app is also completely compatible with any mobile or web designs, so you can easily use it on the go if that's what you need. A model-driven app is much more like developing an entirely customized Dynamics web app, which you can use to provide a sleek interface for your Dynamics users. It requires a bit of Dynamics know-how to fully utilize. Finally, the last option is Power Pages or Portal app. This is even more complex, but it allows you to do fully customized portal development that can allow external or internal users to view and modify your data in the Dynamics environment. It also has a lot of customization options available and gives a lot of control over the portal. For all intents and purposes, though, a Power App typically refers to a Canvas app, and that's what we're going to be using today. So I'll go ahead and click this Create button. The next prompt asks you for the general format of the app. This just tells PowerApps the approximate screen size of the application, which you can manually modify if necessary. You can use either of these formats on the web application, but phone apps have bars around them since the screen needs to be resized to maintain its formatting. I'm going to go ahead and select phone here since we're building a sample app and you can see what it looks like on web. When you create a phone app, you'll need to download the PowerApps app in your phone's app store and log in with your Microsoft user to access the app on your mobile phone. But you can always access on the web without doing that. I'm going to give this app a name and just call it Hello World, and then I'll go ahead and click Create. You'll immediately get a pop-up for some how-tos and walkthroughs, which I'm just going to go ahead and hit skip on, but they're generally worth checking out. PowerApps has relatively good documentation made by Microsoft. This is the PowerApps editor where you can start building your app. In the center, we have the body of the app. Right now, it's blank, but we'll add some stuff to it shortly. On the left side, we have a lot of different buttons that are primarily corresponding to what elements and other things you can do with your app. While on the right side, we have the properties that we modify of those elements to make them do what we want. On the top, we have some quick access buttons, most of which are just a second way to quickly access the same things as on the left side. In this bar, you'll write your actual code based off what property you have. On the far right here, you'll have some nice helpful tools for checking out your app and saving and running the app itself. Remember that the primary purpose of PowerApps is to display and typically modify data. That obviously entails that we have some data to begin with, so that's typically where we start. There are a few ways to add data in a PowerApp. You can either select in the top left on the quick navigation bar, or you can select this database tab on the furthest left side of the screen and click this Add Data button. They both do the same thing. Right away, you'll be presented with this drop-down that will read out your current environment's dataverse tables. These tables can connect directly to your data. I'm going to go ahead and select my test contact table that I built for this. Your app will then take a little while to connect to and load in the connection. When it's finished, you'll have a little tab here that just indicates which connections you have set up. You can select the ellipses here to refresh your data or to directly edit what's in the table. I'm just going to leave it how it is for now. Back in the app, I'm going to add an element that can handle the displaying of our new contact connection. To do this, I'll go to the Insert tab on the left navigation. You can also use the Quick Access bar for the same functionality. Some of the best ways to display your data are via galleries and forms. I'm going to start by adding a gallery. I'll type in gallery to the search bar. Here we can see there are a few different types of galleries, which primarily indicate the different ways you want to display the data. The easiest to use type is the vertical gallery, so I'll add one of those. This is a gallery control. They operate via a data source. You can see we're being prompted to add actual data, so this lorem ipsum will actually go away. Since we have already connected our contacts table, I'll go and slot that in. And there you go. We can see that the gallery has pulled in some fields of the table by default. Let's go over to the tree view on the left so we can see our added element more easily. In the tree view, we can see all the elements that would exist within our apps. At the top level, we have our actual app itself. When we select an element, we can view all of the properties on the right side that this element contains. There is also an advanced tab, which gets more involved with properties, which allow us to directly change the code that is inside most of the properties on a control. We also have a screen element, which has some options as well. Then our gallery that we added and the pieces of the gallery itself. Let's resize the gallery a bit. You can see as I change the element, the values on here also change. So we can type in whatever values we want for X and Y, and it'll make the gallery conform to that. We also have a couple styling options as well. Back on the left nav again, let's click into the actual gallery itself and select the title. The neat thing about this gallery is that it will display whatever we want for each of the different records that we have in our table. You can modify the properties displayed here by taking the text box and going up into the editor at the top. Changing the part after this item, we can add any of our properties and PowerApps will know which is which for us and update it. You can see now that I've pulled the GUID of the actual contact itself. I'm going to just quick undo that. Another simpler way to do this is to go to the right nav after selecting the gallery, going to the Fields tab and hitting Edit. Here we can select from the drop-down which fields that we actually want. Under the Title 1 section, which is our text box, we can change it to any of these other fields on here. There's a lot you can do in a gallery, but I also want to touch on a few other useful elements. Next, we'll go ahead and add a form control. To do this, I'm going to go back to the Insert tab and type in form. We're going to select an edit form here but there are also other types of forms. You can see right away that we're not actually connected to any data. So we're going to go up into the top right here and change the data source to being equal to contacts. This automatically pulled in a couple fields as well. So let's go ahead and edit a couple of these fields quick, just so we can see what they look like. I'm just going to remove this created on field, and I'm just going to add that date of birth one, which I have data for. You can see it's pulling in the you can see that it's pulling in the controls by itself based off of what data type is in the table. Let's go ahead and exit from the control for now. Going back to our gallery, I'm actually just going to quick change the positions of these. Going back to our gallery for a moment, by default, it creates this little button, which we're going to modify so that we can actually use our form. In the top bar, we can see what code is in our onSelect trigger. That is, when the button is pressed, we're going to execute the following code. On the left of that, we can actually get a dropdown of every property related to this control. That's a lot of stuff, so I'm just going to go straight back to the field. Let's type this code into our property. Set form rec this item. And go ahead and close that. Here we've declared the variable form rec is now equal to the record itself. Variables in PowerApps do not have their typings declared. The next step is to move back to our form. We'll select the Advanced tab in the Properties and scroll down to the Item property. We'll go back up into the bar to set this equal to form rec. Now what we've said is that the form is actually going to go and select what we want and display it whenever we click the button. To get it to populate, we'll run our app by selecting the play button in the top right. This is what the app looks like on a web app. We can actually see that we can change formats as well, but I'll leave it here. I'm going to select the button for the record we're going to try and edit. You can see now that the form is populated with our data. We'll change our data to say hello world. We can now hit the exit button in the top right. What's cool about PowerApps is it actually maintains the data when it's loaded after running it. We have one last step before we're ready to modify. Once again, let's go ahead and go back to our insert via the left nav and click button. I'm just going to move this button down to the bottom of the page. I'm going to quick go to the Properties tab and change our onSelect to being Submit Form 1. This calls a function which will actually allow us to submit our form and will pass in the form that we want us to submit. While we could go hit play again, let's actually save and publish our app to run it from a user's perspective. Let's hit the save function since we haven't actually saved our app yet. After saving, we'll hit this button on the way right to actually go ahead and publish this, so that way everyone will actually get the updates that we've made. After publishing, let's hit this back button in the top left. And we're going to go ahead and hit leave. All right, so this is what it looks like now back on the apps page. I'm just going to go ahead and open it up to run it as though a user was going to run it. Once again, we have to select the button in order to make it load in. Here we go. We've pulled in our record. And we're just going to go and say, hello world, and then just hit the button. And it actually updated the gallery and it updated our change back in the data source. Remember, this functionality can be used with any other data source as well. So you could be doing this in SQL or whatever else that you want. Finally, let's go back to our apps tab so we can show how to share with users. First, we're going to select the app that we're trying to share, and then we're just going to hit the share button. Then we're going to type in the name of somebody that we want to share with. I'm going to go ahead and share with Emily. When we do this, we can let her be a co-owner in the app, which will allow her to access and edit the app itself. If we just want her to be a user, this will just show the app, and she'll just click the button on the play apps of make.powerapps.com. You can also customize an email to be sent to your new user. If you don't want them to be notified, you can go ahead and uncheck this box. Note that adding users will share connections in the app, so please keep that in mind for security reasons. Finally, let's hit share so she can use it. You've now created your very first PowerApps app. There's quite a lot of things you can do, and this is only scratching the surface of what you can do. PowerApps is quite good at synthesizing a lot of information and editing data in data sources. It's overall a pretty helpful tool and a great addition to the Dynamic Suite. Thank you for joining today's FAST class. Stick around to see our topic for next week.